Hi friends, so we're going to be doing a 20-minute yoga practice this morning that will involve all sorts of different introductory foundational style movements that are in a typical vinyasa flow, and if you're comfortable with this, it'll allow you to be able to do some of my more advanced practices later on down the line. So see how this goes, see how you feel, and then if you're feeling adventurous, you can try one of the longer and more advanced practices. Knees to your chest. Take a moment to settle into a few deep breaths. Maybe rock back and forth or side to side. Just massage your spine. You notice when you breathe with steady intention to your breath, it has a bit of a calming effect, especially if you feel that you're apprehensive at the beginning of a practice, you're not sure what to expect. So as I said before, we'll spend this time just moving with foundational type movements that are, for the most part, very non-threatening, not too overly difficult for most. And just take inventory of how the body feels. So from here, take your feet to the ground, okay, heels close to your hips, knees about hips distance apart, your arms down by your sides. We're going to go into actually a basic bridge pose just for 5 repetitions. So on an inhale, go ahead and lift your hips away from the ground. Just fire up your glutes and your hamstrings just slightly. And I don't want you to clench, I just want you to be aware. And then lower back down. And then once you lower back down, I want you to go ahead and tilt your pelvis, the top of your pelvis forward, and kind of arch your lower back. So you could fit almost like your entire arm under your low back. And then we'll come back to neutral. So closing in that space, lifting the hips, nice and easy, taking a breath. Let it out and lower down. And when your sacrum hits the ground, go right into that back bend. Just gentle back bend. I'm doing this because I want you to notice the difference as you go into the tilt. So start to make that space in your low back a little smaller, but not necessarily pressing in. Keep that, then lift your hips. Lower down, allow your sacrum to grace the mat, then tilt into a little mini back bend. And then come on back through neutral. Again, tuck the pelvis ever so slightly, lift up. Just think about it, building awareness. That's all you're doing here. You can notice what happens. When I do this, it feels that way. Hips down, right into that back bend, right into that neutral. So notice what your neutral feels like, right? So if you were to put your hands on your hip bones, they're not tilted forward, and nor are they tipping backward. They're nice and level, right to left, side to side. And maybe if you were to slide your hand underneath your low back, you would feel a little bit of space there, but it's not that big back bendy shape that we were doing before. So I ask you, can you keep that and lift your feet away from the floor until your knees are over your hips and your shins are parallel to the ceiling? Now, when you do that, put your hand on your abdomen. It's very likely that you're going to feel your core firing up. This is a good thing. We like this, right? This tells us that we can hold neutral spine and engage our core simultaneously. So place your hands on your ribs. Take a big breath in. Fill your belly all the way up. Exhale it all the way out. Draw the ribs down without pressing your lower back completely into the floor. It's a separate thing. Go ahead and relax. Take a big breath in. Let your belly fill like a balloon, and then exhale it out. Draw the ribs down toward the hips. Leave the space in your lower back, maintaining that neutral spine. And then we'll do it one more time. Big breath in. Exhale it out. So good. All right. Rest your feet on the ground. Just let it relax. Like let no attention be happening. Just let your body get relaxed. Can you notice the difference between what you just did to where you are now? Right? A lot of these poses that we do in yoga is that ability to be able to tap into that neutral spine and hold it. And as we try to move our body into other positions, we always come back to integrating our core strength. So with that, go ahead and take your feet a little wider than hips distance apart. Take your arms out wide with your palms facing the ceiling. Take a big breath in, fill all the way up. And then in your exhale, swing your legs to the right until you come to the outside edge of your right foot. Allow the top leg, inside edge of the top leg, to just gently move its way toward the mat. All right, not necessarily pressing, just allowing gravity to provide a little bit of a stretch through your left side body. Take an inhale here, come back through center, and then on the exhale, go to the other side. So just doing a little movement through the low back. On your inhale, come back through center. And then bring your knees to your chest and take your hands on tops of your knees. Easy enough. Now notice when you do this, as soon as your knees move towards your chest, your lower back is on the ground again. Again, not a bad thing, just a point of observation. Now you're in spinal flexion. Release your knees, bring your feet back to the floor. This is the last thing we'll do on our backs. Come to neutral, we've already been there. Again, you've just got like that finger width space between your low back. Cross your right ankle over your left knee for a figure four. Keeping the spine neutral, space in the low back with the left foot away from the floor. Bring it till it's level with your left knee. Interlace your hands behind your left thigh and press your right knee away from you. Keep your spine as neutral as you possibly can. Not an easy task. Generally speaking, what happens when we come into figure four, we go right into flexion, right? That lower back goes right down to the mat. Again, not always a bad thing, just a point of observation to notice that they are separate entities. Go ahead and uncross your legs and then just do the same thing on the other side. Left ankle over right knee, take your hands behind your right thigh, stretch your left knee away from you. Maintain that neutral. Notice if you've got hiking hips, that right hip might want to be moving away from the floor. Can you stretch it down away toward the top of your mat? Maybe yes, maybe no, right? All right, go ahead and uncross your legs. Take your knees to your belly again, coming into that flex state. And let's do a few circles with the knees, just wide. Don't worry so much about what direction you're going. I'm pulling my knees towards my chest and then pressing them out and away, feeling just a gentle stretch through my inner thighs as I do that. And I'll do it 3 or 4 more times, and then I'm going to do the same thing, but I'll reverse direction. So how do you do that? With the knees together, take them out wide and then in towards your chest. So I'm pushing my knees away. Your feet might move too, that's fine. Should feel like a little bit of just gentle movement to your hips. Just sort of this idea that you're moving your hips through external rotation on both sides. So when we do things like that figure four stretch, it's the same sort of idea, but we're just passing through. All right, go ahead and roll over to your side, and we're gonna come on up into our first downward facing dog. I have to step off the camera for just a moment, guys. Just bear with me. You know downward facing dog. Don't worry so much about making it, perfect. Just feel your way. I personally like a downward facing dog that's a little more, especially for my first one, keeping my knees bent. And I say this a lot, it's really about maintaining your spine, your spinal alignment. So if you think back to the way you were when you are on the floor, right, and you have that really back bendy shape and you have the tucked under shape, you notice that it is very difficult to maintain a neutral spine with the legs perfectly straight. So definitely try bending the knees a little bit more and then sliding your hips back enough until you feel the tops of those hamstrings stretching. Keep the arms really straight and push the mat away from you. Okay, get your arms really strong. On an in-breath, roll forward to plank. Use your core strength. Lift the back of your head. Look slightly forward of your fingertips, maybe about 6 inches. Bend your knees again and then slide your hips back. Go right back to downward facing dog. See if you can work towards a slightly straighter leg this time. Again, you don't have to lock it out, nor do you have to press your heels to the ground. But see if you can maintain that neutral spine and begin to open up the backs of your knees a bit more. We'll take another breath in here. Exhale it all the way out. Roll forward into the top of your plank. Look forward. Belly stays lifted. Legs stay strong. Soften your knees. Slide your hips back. We'll only do this one more time here. Shift the focus to the legs for just a moment. Notice where your ankles are. Notice where your knees are. Knees and ankles in one straight line. Take a breath. Roll forward into your plank. And then from here, lower your knees down. Just stay here for a moment. Notice your plank. And then see if when you lower yourself all the way down to the resting point on the mat, if you can do it with your hands a little further back. So most of us, myself included, I have to slide my hands back a little bit. So I'm going to think about lowering myself to the ground. Just slowly, 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 till I come all the way to the ground. All right, so I went down at one rate of speed. I'm just going to take my blocks to my side, right in my face. Take your hands alongside of your chest. Again, the further back, the better. Press the tops of your feet into your mat. Hug your inner elbows toward the midline and lift your chest. Okay, just taking it into that baby cobra. Exhale and release. Press yourself back to child's pose, just for breath. Tuck the toes, forehead to the ground. Exhale, roll forward to a kneeling plank. And then lower yourself down again. Elbows hugging in, chest moving forward. Notice as you do this, the back of the head stays lifted. It resists gravity as you lower yourself all the way down to the ground until your chest comes right between your hands. Roll the feet over so the tops of your feet are pressing into the mat. Take a breath in here. Hug the inner elbows toward the sides of your waist. Lift your chin, lift your chest, look forward. Take a breath. Exhale, release, and press right back into child's pose. Stretch your arms, hips back to heels. Forehead to the ground if you're able to do that. Roll forward, back to the top of that kneeling plank. Legs engaged, low belly engaged. Last time, lower down. One steady, slow, and controlled pace. Take a breath in, lift up into cobra. Isometrically press your palms into your mat and pull your palms back towards your feet until you feel your mid-back fire up. Lower yourself down, press back into child's pose. We'll stay in child's pose for 3 breaths, forehead down. Do try tucking your toes under so that the soles of your feet are exposed to the wall behind you and your toes are bent. And I know that that's hard and it may be uncomfortable for you, possibly. If that's the case, feel free to do what you need to do to take care of yourself. But otherwise, give this a try. It's a great stretch for the bottoms of your feet. Roll forward to the top of a kneeling plank. Take your left leg back and your right arm forward on fingertips. Just put your fingertips on the ground, press into the ground and press your foot into the ground. Okay, feel how your left hip may want to roll out. See if you can scoot the right hip crease back and roll the left hip crease down enough until your hips stay level. Keep that, lift your left leg, lift your right arm and hold. 3, 2, and 1. Lower everything down back into that tabletop position. We'll only do this once. Stretch your left fingertips away from you. Send your right leg back. Press down with a certain degree of tension into that right arm. So stay really strong. Notice the squaring of the hips. On an inhale, lift the leg, lift the arm, and reach. And I want you to reach enough that it feels as though you're trying to touch the opposite end of the room. Keep the back of the skull lifted. Ribs smoothing in. Exhale and release. Left hand down, right knee down. Take a moment here. One of those moments of just stillness, like where are we going to go next? Take your hands forward to the top of your mat. Slide your hips back to downward facing dog. Hold here for 5 breaths. So we started this practice with just some really basic movement, right? And as I said before, we're going to start with the basics and work into a little bit more of a flow. Have your blocks ready to go if you know that you need them. Always good practice, right? Play around too. I encourage you guys to play around with bending your knees here. Right? I don't want you to necessarily look in the camera. I prefer that you be in your own body. But again, see what it feels like to bend your knees and maybe focus on keeping your knees a little bit wider if they tend to roll in. Right? That's a glute thing, I know. It's also a little bit of inner thigh. Take a breath in here. Exhale it all the way out. Walk your feet to your hands. And fold over your legs. Stay in your fold and heel toe your feet apart until they're about hips distance apart. Lift your toes away from the ground and slide your palms underneath your feet and press your toes down into your wrist creases. Once you've done that, lift up against the weight of your feet until you feel a little space in the front of your wrist. Take a breath and let it out. Take another breath. Lift your toes away from your hands. Take your hands in front of your feet and walk your feet together. Soften your knees and kind of drop your hips back so the weight comes into your heels. Take a breath in and use the strength of your hamstrings to come all the way up into a standing position. Exhale your arms to your sides, Tadasana. Oh shoot. What happened here? Do I still have you guys? I hope. It's happened again. Oh no. Oh no, there they are. I'm not sure what happened. Beth, can you hear me? All right, did I lose you all together? I think my computer decided to run an update in the middle of the class. How inconvenient. It's okay. It's a perfect time to join back together. Come back to the top. And Sandy got bumped out, so it was a little disorienting. Okay, so come to the top of your mat. And we'll just go through a few sun salutations here just to get us all back on the same page. Take an inhale here. Reach your arms all the way over your head. Look up towards your hands. Exhale and fold over your legs. Keep your legs nice and straight. Lift through the back of your hips. Lengthen through your spine. Look forward. Set those shoulder blades on your back. Exhale, step back, chaturanga. So think back to the beginning, right, when I did that warm-up pose. If you know that this feels better on your body to do your cobras this way, that's what you should do. Tuck your toes. Use the strength of your legs and your low belly to press yourself back to downward facing dog. Try to be aware of when you noodle your way off of the floor. Right, super common, right? To just kind of pull up away from the floor using your arms. I want to encourage you to use your core strength as much as you possibly can when you do that. Bend your knees, look forward toward your hands, walk your feet right between those hands, or jump. Exhale and fold. Inhale, stand tall. Exhale, arms to your sides, Tadasana. We'll do it again. Inhale, take a breath. Exhale and fold. Inhale, lift your shoulders, lift your head. Exhale, step back. Chaturanga. Inhale, Cobra. I'm loving this version of being on my knees. Tuck your toes, fire up your thighs, and use your core and your legs and your arms equally to pull yourself back. Think of it more as a practice of safety and integration of your body rather than, just trying to move yourself away from the floor. How attentive can you be on those transitions, right? So it's things that we're not even aware of that inevitably cause us discomfort in our bodies. But slowing down enough to just be aware of a movement pattern can be really, really effective at just moving better. On your exhale, bend your knees, look towards your hands. And come to the top of your mat. Exhale and fold. Inhale to stand. Exhale, arms to your sides. Tadasana. We'll go through that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. Long spine. All right, make that feel different than your forward fold as best you can, just to be aware. Five breaths in, down dog. On your exhale, soften your knees, walk your feet to the top of your mat, and fold over your legs. Let your head and neck go heavy. Inhale, rise up to stand, look up towards your hands. Exhale, your arms to your sides, Tadasana. Take a moment here. Take your hands to your hips. And as you do that, pull your inner elbows towards each other. So I said before, pull toward the midline, but what I'm really trying to say is I'm pulling in. And as soon as I do that, I want to be aware of an opening through my collarbones, maybe a little stretch through my chest. I'm going to keep that and then release my arms to my sides. Now, can I do that and pull my ribs down and in and maintain that neutral spine? So when I'm standing in my Tadasana, I'm very aware of my upper back pitching in to keep me upright. If I weren't doing that, I might just be standing with my shoulders rolling in. So if you know that you are prone to doing that, right, to losing that upper back engagement, that's a nice little technique that you can use to make sure that you are a little bit more engaged and aware and quite frankly balanced. On an inhale, rise up, keep that engagement in your back. Exhale and fold over your legs, keep that engagement in your back until you come right into that forward fold. Inhale with a half lift, it's the same thing. Hug the scapula towards each other. Place your hands on the ground, step your left leg back. Here we are in low lunge. Lower your left knee down to the ground. Still keep that awareness in your upper back. Take your arms up over your head. Arms parallel to each other or interlace your hands together, your choice. Take a breath here. Exhale it out. Notice on that exhale your ability to smooth the front rib cage in and down. Slide your right knee maybe forward, but still keep that low belly lifting up. Exhale your hands back down to the ground. Step your left foot forward and switch sides. Very simple. Right knee down to the ground. It's our Anjaneyasana. Inhale, reach your arms up. Palms together or arms parallel. Take 3 breaths here. Exhale your hands down. Step your right foot forward to meet your left. Switch again. Left leg back. Left knee down. Take a moment here to pause and notice your right knee. When you move away from the floor, do you rock back to do that, or are you able to keep that right knee right over the ankle? Press down into your right foot and lift your arms up. Stay super strong there. On an inhale, tuck your left toes under and come right up into high lunge. Use your strength. Oh yeah, I had to look. Normally I'm kind of having my eyes closed and I'm thinking about what we're doing, but I was like, let's see if they can do that. Make their way from the floor. No easy task. Turn your left foot, spin it to the back of the mat, come into warrior two. Maybe you take a gander at your heels. Inhale, reach your arms up, don't change your shape. Exhale, stretch those arms out, plug the shoulders onto your back. So that little routine that we did in Tadasana where you're pulling the shoulder blades toward the spine, here it is again. Turn your right palm up, stretch through your right side body, just gently tilt back. Again, I'm not even using that back hand because I don't want to overdo it. I just want to open up the right side of my body through that side bend. Peaceful warrior. Exhale, side angle pose, right forearm onto your right thigh, stretch up and away. Love it. Inhale, come back through warrior two for a moment, for a breath. Reach your arms up over your head, turn all 10 toes to the long edge side of your mat. Exhale and fold, Prasarita Padottanasana, hands anywhere they feel best to you. So that could be on your ankles. I have mine right in front of me, my arms straight. You can even use the blocks. Or come down to your forearms. So let's say you're a little bit more open, hamstrings are a little more open, and that isn't an issue for you. Feel free to take those forearms down to the ground. Let your head and neck relax. On your next in-breath, if you are on your elbows, just pop up to your hands and walk yourself back to the top of your mat. Step your right foot back and come to downward facing dog. Take 5 breaths here. Maybe you're a little stiff in the hamstrings, you can take the time to pedal out your feet. On your last out breath, when you're fully on empty, take your feet to your hands and fold. Let your head and neck go. Step your right foot back, right knee down to the ground, Anjaneyasana. Inhale, stretch up. Hold here. Firm up your left thigh, press your left heel into the ground, and lift your right knee away from the ground for high lunge. Exhale, open up warrior two. You know the deal, we were here on the other side. My apologies that my back is to you for a moment. Turn your left palm up toward the ceiling, lean back. Again, think side bend, just a little side bend. And this is one of those movements that a little go a long way, right? So you only want to do what your body can hold on to without trying to force your hand down your leg, right? Just a little bit. Maybe from the left shoulder blade down through the left hip. Side angle pose, left forearm on thigh. Notice in your side angle pose a sensation of almost turning your body, almost a hint of a back bend, left ribs toward right ribs, almost a spiraling action. Take a breath in, come on back to a standing position, turn all 10 toes to the long edge of your mat. My apologies that my backside is to you. It is kind of just like being in a crowded class though, you know, right? When you fold over and there's someone right in front of you. It's just like we're all together in the room. Walk your feet as wide as you can and still maintain that contact with the outer edges of your feet. Feel how when you do that, right, you feel much more going on in those inner thighs. Maybe take the head, let it get heavy, forearms down to the ground. You can also try bending your knees a little bit, just a little. Any variation that works for you with the upper body is good with me. If your arms are not straight, go ahead and pop yourself up onto straight arms. Walk yourself back to the top of the mat and right on back to downward facing dog. From here, take a breath. Exhale it all the way out. And roll yourself forward to plank. Bring your knees to the ground. And then let's practice this. One rate of pace. Lower down. Slow, slow, slow. Resist that pull of gravity until your belly finally ends up on the ground along with your chest. Take a breath here, come into cobra, like a baby cobra. Lift your hands away from the ground so you know that you're not relying on your hands. See if you can pull the elbows back and in until you feel that area right in your mid-back firing up. Hold for 3, hold for 2, hold for 1, and come down. Let's take a thigh stretch. Bend your knee. Right knee first. Take a hold of your right ankle. Use a strap if you need to. Take a moment here and notice if that right knee is starting to travel to the right side of your mat. Can you hug it in toward the left one? Take a breath, lift your chest, do a little mini cobra without using your left hand. Exhale and release. Bend your left knee, take a hold of your left ankle, and hug the inner thighs towards each other. Simple as that, right? Take a breath here, lift your chest, lift your right hand away from the ground. The reason why I'm doing that is like I often say, I want you to be able to use your active flexibility and your strength together rather than relying on an external force to get you into the shape. So you can be really confident that if your hand is off the ground, you're using your muscles to do that, right? You've got control, which is really where we want to go. All right, let's go ahead and exhale. Release your foot. Take your hands on either side of your chest. Walk your legs out wide until you feel the side edges of your mat. Press yourself up and back into a very wide child's pose. In other words, my knees are so wide that my torso has plenty of room to fall into that space between my inner knees. Take a few breaths here to just find a little space in your back. You can hear my voice has changed because my nose is smashed on the floor. Through your tabletop position. Take your knees side by side. Here we are in our kneeling little mini chaturanga. In your mind, just take that breath and slowly lower down, like 5 counts down. Feel that, feel the work in your core. I know if you just did core with me, I'm sorry. And arms too, right? Let's not forget that. All right, take a breath. Exhale it out. Bend your right knee and take a hold of your right ankle with your right hand. This time, as you inhale and lift your chest, I'd like you to take your left arm forward by your ear. So not by the ground, but up by the ear. Take a breath. And on your exhale, lift your chest and kick your heel into your hand. Allow your chin to move away from your chest so that you're gazing slightly forward of your mat. Anchor yourself down with the strength of the top of that left foot and hold for 2 more breaths. Exhale and release. Shake it out if you need, and then just set yourself up for the other side since I'm sure you know what's coming. Bend your left knee, take a hold of your left ankle with your left hand, reach your arm forward and take a breath. On an inhale, lift your chest, reach your arm forward, slide that right shoulder onto your back. This is basically, if you guys know dancer's pose, is dancer's pose but from your belly. So really the same benefits, right? We've got that back bendy thing going on, but we're also getting a nice hip opener on that left side, some engagement of the upper back, which is so key. Go ahead and exhale. Take your hands on either side of your chest. So you know when I do something on the floor, chances are pretty good. I'm gonna try doing it on standing. This is how we learn, right? Tuck your toes, press yourself back into that kneeling plank, then lift your knees, then come to downward facing. Take a breath. Exhale it out. I think I need another one there. Inhale. Exhale it out. How about a third? Get back to the top of the mat. Hold over your legs. Inhale, come to standing. Exhale, arms to your sides. All right, take a moment here. I'm looking over, I realize that the top of my head is cut off, but I don't think you guys need my head for this. All right, take your weight into your left leg and bend your right knee and take it into a thigh stretch. So this is everything that we just did on the floor. Now if you know that you need the wall, just go ahead and scoot yourself off camera, it's fine. But what I would encourage you to do is think back to the very beginning of class when I had you on your back and I had you find neutral spine. That's gonna help you here. So if you are kind of jutting forward or tucking under, try to find that neutral. Again, knees side by side, at least to start. And feel how when you kick the top of your foot or your ankle into your hand and straighten your left leg somewhat without locking it out, maybe put your hand on your belly, feel your ribs smooth in and down on the exhale. See if you can keep that. Reach your left arm up over your head. And then just gently tip yourself forward. Don't worry about how far you go. I'm doing a very modified version. If you feel pretty confident with your balance, just keep lifting your right knee away from the ground and stretching it toward the back of your mat. Dancer's pose. Again, if you want to go deeper, lift the right thigh away from the ground. Keep that neutral core engagement so that the back bend is happening in your upper back, not your lower back. Hold. Exhale and come back to standing and release your foot. How'd we do? I almost feel like I've got a look this time. All right, take a breath. Bend your left knee. I love this pose. I think it's very pretty. Challenging for sure. Okay, so proceed with caution, especially when you're apprehensive and you don't know how far you're going to be able to go. Practice maybe tipping forward and back. See how that goes. So even the base move, I just have my foot in my hand. I'm standing on that one leg. And develop a little confidence there. And then reach. So as far as using the wall, I have my window right next to me. I just put my hand on there for a moment because I felt like I was gonna get a little rocky. Look at that, you guys, very nice. So some version of this, right? Stretch your knee back, almost as if you're gonna move your shin toward the back wall. Hold, 3, 2, and 1. Come back to standing, feet side by side. Take a moment. Come back through Tadasana, reintegrate everything in your body, right? You've been through a lot. Take your palms, open them to the front wall, smooth the ribs in and down, lift the chin, slide those ears back in line with your shoulders. Stand at attention. That's what mountain pose is all about, right? On an inhale, reach your arms up over your head, let your eyes gaze up. Exhale and fold over your legs. Inhale, lift the back of your head. exhale, fold again. Stay in your forward fold. This time, take your hands around the backs of your ankles. Soften your knees and round through your upper back until you feel like almost the sense of your shoulders moving away from your back. Exhale and fold. See if when you do that little action, you can get a little deeper in your fold. And you'll notice I have my knees bent. Now I'm doing this and I'm emphasizing this because when we get to our forward folds on the ground, I want you to remember this. It's the same thing, right? It's the same thing. The shape is the same. Inhale, lift, lengthen your spine, straighten your legs, very much like Dandasana, right? Exhale and fold. Use your hands. You can use your hands to just gently support your fold. Navel to spine, weight in your heels. Do it again. Take your hands forward on the ground. Inhale, lengthen, flat back. Think plank in your upper back as best as you can. Exhale and fold over your legs. Straighten your legs as much as you can. So open up the backs of the knees. Let your head and neck get heavy. Release your hands by your side. Shake your head out. Go for a long spine again. Last time I promised. Step your feet back one at a time. Knees to the ground. You know, like I like my repetition, right? My skills. Tent those fingertips and lower down slow and even with that pace. Bend both of your knees. Take the soles of your feet toward the ceiling. Coming into Dhanurasana. So many different ways to do this movement, this pose, this asana, that don't require you to necessarily reach for your ankles. So on an inhale, take your hands back, palms in. Beth and Margaret are very similar to core class, right? Something we did there. But the idea being that when we take the hands by the sides, I want you to engage. Remember what it felt like to hold the block? And you guys can even grab a block and try this. If you were to take your block in your hands, you're going to feel your arms and your upper back firing to a greater degree than you would if your hands were just in the air. Bend your knees and stretch your fingertips back towards your heels. Don't worry yet about grabbing on to your ankles. So I have my block and I'm squeezing it. I'm not even holding it. I'm squeezing it with my hands and I can feel the backs of my arms, my upper back. I'm going to hold for another breath. And I'm going to exhale and release it to the sides and straighten my legs. So when I do it the second time, I'll go ahead and take a hold of my ankles. But if not, that's not in the cards for you. Just repeat what we just did. It's all good. Inhale, take a breath. Lift your chest. Get as much height through your upper body as you can using your own back strength. Bend your knees, heels to your glutes. Take the outside edges of your ankles. Try flexing your feet or not. Doesn't matter. Kick your shins first toward the back wall. That'll help you with the lift. Smooth the ribs in and down. Chin moving away from your chest. Ears sliding back to the shoulders. Take 3 breaths here. Exhale and release. Turn your head to one side. And to the other side. And then just with as much ease as you can muster, roll over onto your back. And when you lie down on your back, come back to just taking inventory of what is going on with your back. So when you come into this heels down, hips down, notice the space that's in your low back or not. Because it may be that you're kind of tucked under, but I doubt it because we've done so much back bending and hip opening. So we began the practice with this sense of understanding where our body was in space, where our spinal alignment was. If you take your hands on the top of those hip bones, you can go back into that anterior tilt with that big back bend and move back through posterior where you're tucking the tailbone under. That's your abdominals that do that, right? So now your low back is flush with the mat. Find the in-between. Keep the in-between. Press your heels into the mat, lift your hips, and hold your bridge pose. Once you're there and you feel pretty confident, there's an ongoing debate about, whether or not we should squeeze the glutes or not. I would say, let's look at what's really priority with a pose like this. It's your core. So find that, keep that. If that means that you're maybe working your glutes a little bit more, then so be it. But we don't want your glutes to steal the show, is another way to say that. Take your hands along by your sides and turn your palms up toward the ceiling until you feel you can press your upper shoulders into the mat. Lift your chest towards your chin and stretch your knees toward the bottom end of your mat. So what we're doing here is we're using the muscles of the upper back to create support and stability. It's exactly what we did in Dhanurasana when we're on our bellies grabbing our ankles. It's the same thing, right? That whole body gets a stretch and the whole back body fires up. Chin away from your chest. Take another breath in. Exhale and release. Come all the way down to the ground. Wasn't that fun? Okay. Stretch your left leg out. And before you lift your right knee in, just keep it bent for right now. Again, go back to what's going on in your lower back. Can you feel that space there? Great. Is it big? Can you make it a little smaller and find neutral? Everybody's different. You sort of have to find what works for you. A lot of it just has to do with your natural posture. So all I would say is, when you go ahead to lift this heel away from the ground, I'd like you to take it so that your shin is parallel to the ceiling and your knee is level with your hip. Just hold that. Maybe put your hand on your belly to remind you that it's working. So if you think about poses like Utthita Padangusthasana, it's when you stand on one leg and you straighten your leg in front of you, it's the same thing. So I want you to fire up your straight leg side, in this case your left side, and turn your left kneecap toward the ceiling. Keep that. Feel the engagement in your belly. Take your hands underneath your right thigh. Don't worry about getting the thigh close to your chest just yet. Stretch your left heel up toward the ceiling until your leg is completely straight if you can. Keep that straightness in your leg. Flex your foot, toes to shin, toes towards the kneecap, press your heel out toward the ceiling. Now, press the back of your thigh into your hands and still maintain that connection with your upper back and your mat. So this should feel like it takes work, right? It's one of those positions that we put ourselves in, and it's easy to just kind of like lift the leg and not really think about what you're doing. But can remember how this will serve you in those standing poses to not pitch yourself forward, right? Still really want to work the whole body isometrically. And then from here, bend your right knee, cross your right ankle over your left knee, so you'll have to bend your left knee to do that. Take your arms out wide, stay with that engaged upper back, and take your legs to the right. Swing your legs to the right. Notice the stretch in your left side waist, maybe even to your low back. On your inhale, come back through center, uncross your right ankle, straighten your right leg. Revisit your neutral spine. Since you've been here before, you probably can find it relatively quickly. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that you're bearing down to hold your core strength. I just want you to be aware of how it's working to keep you in this shape. Yeah? So shin parallel, knee over hip. Hold that. Find it. Find that core engagement. Interlace your hands behind your left thigh. Press your right heel into the floor with a straight leg. And stretch your left heel away from your hip toward the ceiling. Toes to shin. You can also think about what it would feel like to pull your left kneecap up into your quadricep. Really firing up that quad will help to open up your hamstring. We'll take 3 more breaths here. Again, these patterns, these movements, these asana, these poses that we do over and over again, Sometimes we go on autopilot, so easy to do. Just slow it down and find our way into just paying a little bit more attention. Go ahead and bend your left knee, cross your left ankle over your right knee. Take your arms out to the sides with your palms facing the ceiling, and take those legs all the way over to the left. Bring yourself back towards center, feet side by side. I know I'm driving this neutral spine thing home, but I think some of these poses that we're doing really do hit that, where they feel like a completely different thing when you're more aware of that. Take your knees, or rather, let me say this a little differently. Take your feet away from the floor, knees over hips, so that your shins are parallel to the ceiling. And find this position. Again, you will probably feel your abs. We won't stay here for long. Take your knees wider than your hips, and then bring your heels, stretch them away from your hips. Now, my whole torso, my whole core just changed there. As soon as I lifted my heels up, my lower back came down into the ground, almost like a shape of a banana. Not a bad thing, I'm just aware of it. Coming into Happy Baby, inhale, take a breath. Reach up to the outside edges of your feet with your elbows inside of your knees, and then come to lie back down. Now, if your head, I want to just say this, if your head is naturally lifted here in this position, I would like you to slide something under your head, like a pillow or a blanket or a sweatshirt, because it really is pretty key that you're able to keep the back of the head down in the ground. Go back to that sensation of moving the backs of the shoulders, upper back, into the ground until you feel those collarbones run and you feel you're actually having to work to do that. Stretch your heels away from your hips until your heels are above your knees. And then the last but not least, I want you to try to bring yourself back to neutral spine. So that's kind of like a lengthening of the tailbone. I can't get that arch back in my back at all, but I can feel that I'm headed in that direction. Does that make sense, I hope? Right, so if I were in posterior, I'd be way up like this. If I'd be in anterior, I would be ready for Cirque du Soleil. Right now, I'm right in between. I'm really working to sort of almost find my sacrum as best as possible. So to say that there's space in my low back, I feel space even though I couldn't put my hand under there. I'm going to take another breath in here and let it out. I'm going to cross my right leg over my left and take my hands to my knees. I'm going to go back to playing around with the back bendy shape. Right? So as I rock my knees back and forth, I can feel my lower back coming away from the ground. Feels pretty good. Feels like movement. So I'll find neutral. Again, reestablish that, and start to move my hands down my shins towards my ankles, and then maybe start to pull my ankles away from each other. This pose reminds me of a wishbone. It's a reclining version of cow face pose, Gomukhasana, which can be really intense on the hips, especially if your hips are tight. I feel like the benefits here are kind of nice because you can completely customize it based on you, where you are today. Uncross your legs. Stack those knees on top of each other, hands to the tops of your knees. Reestablish that neutral spine. Slide your hands down your shins in the direction of your ankles, and then stretch your hips and your heels away from you. So I'm actually, instead of trying to keep my knees towards my belly, I'm actually pressing them slightly away from me. creating space that way. Upper shoulder blades still firm to the mat, chest open, wide collarbones. Take a breath, let it out, uncross your legs. We'll come up into a seated position for just a few more poses before we go into our Shavasana. Go ahead and, all of that stuff was neutral, so we did so much back bending, but we also focused on forward folding in Uttanasana and Ardha Uttanasana, which is that half lift. I'm going to scoot back, you guys can see me. If you need a little bit of a lift under your sits bones, please take it. Before we do anything at all, just go ahead and try to sit up as tall as you can, like you're in a rigid upright chair. Take your hands down to the ground so that you can open up those shoulders. Thumbs away from you, pinkies pointing back behind you. Lift your chest, lift your chin, hug the inner elbows in, and connect with that feeling of your back holding you upright, your core strength holding you upright. See if you can hold and maintain that for another breath or two. There's your Dandasana. Start to walk your hands in front of you. Still keep this upper back alert. Walk your hands away. At some point, this is as far as I can go before my whole back wants to collapse. So in a forward fold, it's not that you can't find that general curve, but you don't want it to become this situation where your mind is saying you need to touch your toes and everything else goes out the window. Grab a strap or keep your hands on the floor. Start to walk your hands a little closer to your feet until you feel your belly start to move closer to your thighs. This is just like Uttanasana. Relax your head so that your eyes are gazing down. Still continuing to walk fingertip by fingertip, hands towards your feet, whether you touch or not. When I had you doing the forward fold today, I asked you to hold your ankles and use your upper body strength to maybe coax you a little further into that fold. That's fine to do that. Just try not to force the issue. I'd also say too that if you really, really are tight in the low back, you can try taking your feet apart, see if that offers you up a little bit more freedom in that pose. Tuck your chin. Relax your head. Walk yourself back up into a seated position, hands behind you, and we'll come into our Shavasana. I think that's a good time. I'm looking outside at my cucumber plant, and if you guys have ever grown one, it's like every time I look, there's another new. This one's only about like this big, but in like 3 days, it'll be the size of my forearm. We'll take about 5 minutes here. Anywhere that you are comfortable in your Shavasana is a good Shavasana. before you come out, just take a moment to move your hands, move your feet. Roll over onto your side. Come up slow and easy. Or don't come up at all. This is one of those days where it feels like you could definitely stay there for a little longer. I know I could. Let me pop on over. Thanks. Sandy got. Excuse me. I don't know, her computer, her thing, I don't know. It still says connecting to audio, so I don't even know if she's with us. I'm just talking to myself. Nancy and Margaret, I'll have to have you guys unmute yourself. How are you guys? Good. I know, right? I was like, wow, let's do this for another 10 minutes. But anyway, do you guys know when this storm is really supposed to crank up? Is it a definite, like, we need to worry about losing power kind of thing, or? Yeah, I did. That's why I was like, oh gosh, I wasn't even paying attention to this. So. Hey, if you find Bounty paper towels in your travels, can you let me know where, because I have not found any. Those are my favorites. The other brands are just not cutting it. Perfect. Because the problem is like the Scott ones are not absorbent enough. The Viva are like linty, like they're almost like a cloth diaper. They're so thick. And with the Scott ones, it's like I end up using more than, there's certain, I mean, yeah, I know. Paper towels is the one place where I'm probably not as environmental as I ought to be. After the pandemic, my dish towels are, you should see them. It's like, they're like all rags now because I've used them so much. It's like, I think I might treat myself. Like, just, how is that good for the planet, throwing away a bunch of rags? I don't even know. Like, it's better to use paper towels. I know. I'm like, I'm trying, but like, they're so stained. I saw my husband, like, you know, cleaning his golf clubs with a dish towel the other day. I'm like, what are you doing? No wonder this doesn't look good. Next thing you know, you'll be cleaning the lawnmower and the leaf blower with it, but I'm sure that's never happened in your house. Why are you using that? For its unintended purpose. Anyway, I hope that, Sandy, I don't know if you're still here watching us because I can't see you. So if you are, have a great day. It's just a blank screen. I don't know what she can see and what she can't. So thank you guys. Oh, super quick. I'm here Friday if you are, but next week I am out for a couple days and I will not be teaching. I'm going to take a few days off. So it's already reflected on the schedule, but they're okay. So thank you. Heads up. All right. See you guys soon. Bye. friends, so we are going to be doing a practice that will last about an hour long. The first 20 minutes can actually be done independently if you just simply feel like doing a little gentle movement. It'll be more of that beginner level yoga, and I'm actually going to put that into a separate video that you can do on your own. However, when you start this practice does get a little bit more vigorous, and we will and then after the first 20 minutes, this class will get a little bit more vigorous. You can expect a fair amount of hip opening, a little bit of special balance pose, and after the first 20 minutes, the class does get a little bit more of a flow practice, a little more vigorous, and we're going to be taking some of our standing poses and doing them on the floor. So we'll see a fair amount of repetition, but what's nice about that is it's an opportunity to practice, and that way you can start to look at poses from a different perspective. So thanks for joining me, and let's have fun.